Ready? Okay, so welcome to another episode of the Manchester SEO podcast. Really delighted today to be joined by Sally Rogers.
Hello, James.
Hello. We've just had a conversation about whether actor or actress is appropriate,
Yes.
but both.
Either.
And
Yeah.
writer.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get into that as we go along. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. It's a bit of a journey, isn't it, for you? Because you live down south.
I'm right on the south coast now. That's quite a new venture for me, yes.
The weather's quite good at the moment, so that.
Yeah, well, there's a real microclimate as well where I
Is
live,
there?
so it's really gorgeous, yeah.
Amazing. Well, we're very jealous about that. So, I suppose we usually start with tell us about yourself and what you do, and I suppose we've just really said that. But how did it all start? Where did you interest?
Well, it's so interesting because I was thinking about this as I was driving over, and how your mother was really, really rather influential.
Oh, really?
In many things that I did, really.
Good old Sheila.
Yes, she, now I don't know whether she did it just for me, we'd have to ask my mother, but she used to give me, it wasn't elocution, it was more like reciting poems. And there was one poem called Treasure. I still remember the first couple of lines of it,
Sure.
Can you believe that? That was, and I must have been 7 or 8 or really young.
Yeah.
And also because I've just moved, I found a portrait that she painted of me. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Unbelievable, really. It's just like a.
Yeah.
I think she'd taken it from a photo maybe that my mum had given me, but there I am with a little 70s feather cut, as we called it. So yeah, it's interesting. So I was obviously really interesting then, and probably a little petulant because I was an only child at that point.
Well, our parents were best friends, really.
They were, yes. I think they played badminton together, did they?
They did, yes. Yeah. And so elocution lessons are really important in my mum's development. She fostered out, and foster parents were a bit, forgive me, Mum, if I get this wrong, but they were a bit embarrassed about her West Country accent that she had at the time because she was from Gloucester. And so elocution lessons were so that
know any of this.
they wouldn't be, I suppose, embarrassed about the difference in accent. And this became a massive benefit to her confidence because she had then the poems that she could recite and be performed to their friends, and suddenly she wasn't considered stupid or not intelligent.
Sure.
Because they were proud of something that she could do, so it was really important.
Right.
And I suppose, she wanted to give some of that back.
Yeah. It's interesting, that whole I am slightly borderline obsessed with dialect. But when and it wasn't until I started to audition for drama school that I even was aware that I had an accent.
Yeah.
So I remember doing some Shakespeare audition for a particular London school, and they said, "Oh, can you lose your Stockport accent?" And I said, "Oh, I don't have one." Because my cousins thought I was posh, so I was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a real baptism of fire, that.
Yeah.
And then they try and coach you, and it's called received pronunciation, where they'll coach you to, I guess, ostensibly sound like a newsreader. But then it's all about timing. So when I graduated, it was all about cop shows and, much more edgy drama on TV. And suddenly it wasn't fashionable to be posh.
No.
And the posh thing has had a revival since The Crown and, Downton Abbey and that will wane and then it will come back. And so, it's all about timing. Everything's about timing.
Yeah.
I think.
So do you remember a time, I feel like I've skated over quite a lot of time there, but you went to drama school?
I did.
And did you enjoy that?
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
I think more the people that you were with and...
Yeah, and just to be so saturated in something that you love and given permission to do it daily. And the school was very tough. They were very hard on me about my Stockport accent, you know. But it was a joy, actually. It was a real joy. And to live in London felt exciting, and it was much easier to be a student then. You could get all kinds of grants, and I loved it. I really did love it, actually. And then as I was leaving, we were encouraged to audition for a trip to the Moscow Arts Theatre School, and they took 2 students from each school.
Right.
And I got picked for that.
Yeah.
And I remember the guy who used to try and encourage me to speak. He was like, "Oh, it'll be an experience for you." You know, it was frustrated that I had been picked.
Yeah.
Because he needed me to know that, you know, it would always hold me back, my accent.
Yeah. The Stockport accent.
Yeah, and I was like, who cares in Moscow how you speak? So that was brilliant timing for me. It was just great to go and do that.
And so you toured Russia? Or
No, we went. There's a theatre school. It's quite famous.
Okay.
Called the Moscow Arts Theatre School, we were there for 3 weeks, and we just studied with the other students.
Yeah.
And my God, you know, again, great timing because, you know, you're feeling a bit broke, you're a student, you feel like it's a struggle. You go to Moscow and people are really struggling. It's a 5-year course there.
Yeah.
And it was very scruffy, the school, and you'd hear Rachmaninoff down a corridor, and you wander down and there it is, a guy you've just seen in a play the night before, and, you know. So their skill and their talent was mind-blowing, actually, really.
Yeah. It was quite tough was that the 80s?
Yeah. So, I think it was just around Glasnost, actually, because I went in 89 to Russia, so I'm sure one of your listeners will know when Glasnost was.
I'm struggling. I don't want to say anything because it'll come back to you in comments.
It certainly felt things were relaxing.
Yeah.
But we would still hold out 10 silk cut and stop a taxi.
Yeah.
You know, that had more currency than the money.
Was a steady transition from graduating? Was it just like graduate and then audition, or was there auditioning moving through as you were going through the drama school?
Do you mean as in to get my first break?
Yeah, to get a job. How did that happen?
Well, what happens? I mean, goodness me, I'm sure it's the same with drama school today. However it's changed, it will still have this format, which is that you do your 3 years, and then that final year, you're performing in plays, and you do and agents come and casting directors, and they all come. They're all looking for who they can get. So I was lucky to get an agent, and then the agent then
puts you forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I graduated in April. I went to Moscow. I had a couple of months of and then I got a great job at Bristol Old Vic Theatre. So I was blessed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's me and one other person working now from my year.
Wow.
So, you know, it's rough. It is rough.
It seems like a tough industry.
Yes, it is. It is. There are highs and there are lows.
Well,
yeah.
Explore them more a bit later. Was there a moment where you thought, do you remember thinking, this is going to be a career?
Yes, I don't think there was any doubt. I think for me, once I'd got into drama school, which felt so far away geographically and, you know, in terms of achieving and knowing statistically how few people they accepted, and, you know, I think once I was in, I thought, okay, I'm off. This is my job. Yeah, this is what I'll do. So, you know, I've been lucky. Yeah. But my child, he's like, should I be a pilot or an actor? I'm like, that pilot. Go and be a pilot, and you can always come back to do what I do. But, you know, don't
come back and play a pilot.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard movie stars say, if there's anything that you are good at, that that you feel you could make some money at, go and do that.
Right.
You know, yeah.
There's a choice to be made, isn't there? You know, and I suppose if you have a child that's going into acting, there's a thing where the support network you have, whether they're positive about it or not, and I suppose perhaps in the 70s and 80s it might be a bit different than it is now. Or...
Yeah, I think that's probably very true. Although I think in the 70s and 80s, you probably could only access the industry via drama school. Whereas now there's a whole online self-promotion thing.
Yeah.
That terrifies
Yeah.
the heck out of me.
I had a chat with a guy called Alan Cochrane, who's a really good comedian.
Oh, yeah.
Well known, but I don't think he'd mind me saying he's not social media. He's resistant to it or allergic to it, I think he might have mentioned. But he felt that maybe it might have impeded his career a little bit in terms of jobs that he might not get now that he would have done 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And he talked about learning the craft before...
Chucking yourself out there.
Yeah, because you mentioned someone that was a comedian that was social media famous, and it's all short clips and funny and talking to the crowd. But then you sell out a cinema or a theatre in the Edinburgh Fringe, and you got to keep them going for half an hour or however long it is.
Yeah.
And you can die really quickly. And they haven't learned the craft through the clubs and everything else to be able to hold an audience.
Exactly. I mean, surely that's where you learn your managing of hecklers and the brutality of a Leeds working man's club. Takes no prisoners.
Or even see others do it and how they go about it.
Yeah.
Perhaps you don't see that.
Yeah. I mean, I am fascinated by it. I've worked with several comedians, and I remember John Thompson did a gig at the Comedy Store. And again, I don't think he'll mind me saying that. You know, we all met afterwards, and he was just like, you know, never again. I don't know if I want to do it. You know, that it costs you.
Yeah.
Who's the little guy that used to really perspire really chronically?
Lee Evans.
Lee Evans. I mean, Lee Evans, you could see it really punished him. I never felt that he was enjoying his stand-up set.
No. I struggled to watch it just because it put me on edge a little.
Same. Like Laurel and Hardy, I'm like, oh, really? You're going to hit someone with a plank? You know. I think that's the mark of a brilliant comedian and a brilliant actor, is that your audience is totally relaxed.
Yeah.
100% relaxed. We were talking earlier about adolescence, and I found the whole thing tough knowing it was all in one shot,
right?
Which added to the brilliance of the intensity, but equally I wasn't relaxed at all because I was thinking, what if you're the person that speaks in the 49th minute? Oh, sorry, here we go again, you know. But yeah,
so
comedians are brilliant, interesting humans, I think.
Do you think, because I know you're a very funny person, I've left your mum and dad's house, you and sister, and I'm physically struggling to walk because sides and cheeks hurt. And so do you think, I always think like a sense of humour and a comedic factor is quite good for actors, maybe. Maybe it's an understanding of other people and how they react to emotions.
I think that is true. I know that I, to my own detriment sometimes, often see things in a comedy slant. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
I can't really think of an example, but I definitely will often, if I'm in conversation, I'll often say to somebody, oh, all I can see now is you with the, missing your trousers and the bus. I don't, So I don't know why.
Well, the
I
name
don't
of the
know.
pub that
Yeah, there's immediately 18 people that I want to send a photo of the pub where your studio is. Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, we may put that on the comments. Who knows, but... So going back to acting, obviously you seemed like you got your break into theatre, and was there an ambition to go then into TV and film from that, or was it?
I think maybe I've always said this, that in theatre you push and stretch and learn and evolve. And then when you get to TV, you execute what you've learned.
Right.
It's very hard to push and stretch within TV.
Sure.
Often because, you wait in your Winnebago, you come out, you do your bit, you go back, And apart from doing a long-running series where you do get to really work that muscle a bit better. But I think what's interesting is, because I'd been to Russia... I think I've become a little bit, a lot of Russian theatre, and Chekhov is all about naturalism and the minutiae of detail and being believed. And I think I was a little bit caught into that.
Right.
So what happened was I went from doing this play at Bristol Vic, and then I went and did a Shakespeare play at Chester, and they asked me would I stay on and do the pantomime. And the snooty gal that I am, I was like, are you having a laugh? Pantomime. Anyways, I thought, well, okay, I need the money, let's go.
Yeah.
And on day one of rehearsal, the director said, if you want to give her a lisp or a funny walk. And I'm thinking, during the process of rehearsal, I discover that.
Yes.
But of course, performance one in front of 15,000 children, where I probably got hit by a boiled sweet.
Yes.
You suddenly learn how to sort of survive in the medium that you're in.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so I learned
completely.
just to be a little bit bigger, broader. And then you get to TV, and then it's all got to come back down again. And you don't really get much training for that. It's a real baptism of fire.
Right.
And a lot of people won't watch themselves on TV. And I think you have to learn what works, what doesn't work, to evolve and improve.
Yeah. We've done 60 odd of these, and some of them haven't seen it yet. You may have listened to it on Spotify.
Oh, sure.
Because they don't like how they look on. The first thing that you see if you're not used to it is, well, God, that's how I look.
Yeah. My
That's
ears
how I
aren't
sound.
even.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, what?
Right. Yeah, and it makes you a bit vain, actually.
Yeah.
I found myself having haircuts.
Yeah.
And things like ironing
Brilliant.
shirts and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, trimming beard a bit more than I would normally.
But actually, it gives you a terrific confidence, I think. I just put a photo of me on our family WhatsApp group. I was like, off to see James Crystal to do a podcast interview, # more makeup than a drag queen. Because you do feel more confident if you've kind of been through the sheep dip of preparation,
The process.
Yeah, but it's true. You watch yourself and you're like, what? Really?
Yeah, and I used to do this a lot. And
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
And say, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not about me.
Well, it is about you. Because I was just going to say, actually, talking about Alan and his reluctance for social media and all of that.
Yeah.
And I always say, in a sense, you have any performer who is self-employed, who is desperate for work, you have to see yourself as a brand.
Well.
And if you wouldn't have a garage full of margarine that wasn't shifting.
Yeah.
And not think about promoting it or repackaging it or finding a way to make it more sellable.
Yeah.
but we're also sort of slightly embarrassed and self-conscious that it's hard to see yourself like that. That's why having an agent is fantastic.
Yeah. And, if I read years ago, and I can't remember the actress' name, but she felt that she'd got a movie role over another actress because she had 8 million more followers.
Oh gosh, yeah.
On Instagram or whatever it was, because I suppose you've got to sell the movie, haven't you?
Yeah.
And if someone that's in it has the ability to do that more than someone else,
yeah,
you make more money, don't you? And you get to do it as well.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That.
Yeah.
It's a real tough one because I think integrity is slightly compromised when you get into that.
Yeah.
But then there's the margarine.
Yeah. Yeah. Integrity is an interesting subject, though, isn't it?
Yes.
And what kind of work that you do.
Yeah.
As to what you feel comfortable with. And, and why. And, whether personal choice or paying the bills is the option that you choose.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it, really?
And probably
I call them mortgage
females.
jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, as in, do I really want to do? I mean, I've never done a job where I don't really stand by it. But there are some, those 4 a.m. dilemmas of like, well, I don't really like that show, but crikey,
Yeah.
Don't like debtor's prison either.
That's a good point. There's always that thing of even in sport where you're asking yourself questions. Do I want to do this? Is this the right way to go?
Yeah.
Is the way we play?
Yeah.
Or the way I behave, is that good? Even though I'm making more money from it.
Yeah.
Just because we can doesn't mean we always should.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite tough, isn't it?
There's an open question there, and there's lots that could be said about it.
But equally, a couple of summers ago, I took a job that I didn't really want to do. And it was one of the most enjoyable experiences. It was shot in the summer. It was filmed in Stratford. Everyone was charming. I really liked the team that I was working with. And I had a word with myself on the trains, just like, well, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Snooty pants. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's really
completely.
interesting, I think.
Yeah. So as a business yourself, what when you were first starting out, did you feel like you had some form of strategy in your mind other than
no, I
agent?
don't. I think I just knew the certain theatres that I liked and respected, and one particular theatre was the Royal Court in London, and an area of London where I stayed when I was at drama school. My drama school was like sort of quite near to the King's Road and Sloane Square, and this theatre, the Royal Court, is on.
Sure.
So I knew that I wanted to work there. I was very excited about the fact that I'd been to see a lot of their work. It was all new plays. I've mainly done new plays. Very rarely I've done a play where the playwright is dead.
Okay.
So always the playwright's in the room.
Yeah.
And so I love that when you just go, God, I don't know what this speech means.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a responsibility there, isn't there, to represent it
Yes.
in the right way for.
Yes. True. You do. You want to tell their story and do it right for them. What I learned about when I did my own play was I'm so more empathetic to the writers who, because you're watching this struggling donkey in the rehearsals thinking, and you're going to run the Grand National in about 3 weeks. Do you know what I mean? I realised they must have been sitting in constant discomfort because in rehearsals you're exploring and learning and trying things out, and they must have been thinking, oh my goodness me, this is agony. This is agony.
Yeah. The critics, they'll ruin me.
The critics, they'll break me.
Yeah. I'll never work in this town again.
Exactly. Take your donkey and trot on.
From the outside in, the impression is that it is a kind of who you know kind of industry potentially.
Yes, but again, it's a long way from Stockport to the King's Road.
There is.
I mean, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone at all.
No.
And now with my own son, who I was able to. So before his piloting, I was able to find him an agent and talk to TV directors. So it's in a way you can introduce them, but they can't. It doesn't mean they'll get the job.
No.
And I'm sure there are a huge amount of famous people whose children haven't been able to break into it.
Sure. Yeah.
So
you've still got to be good.
So you can get an opportunity maybe, and someone might do you a favour by giving somebody else a break.
Right.
But to go back to the donkey imagery, you still gotta bring it.
So, do you feel that you were good at utilising friendships and connections to move forward with this career?
For myself, useless, absolutely useless. Just found it embarrassing and.
The embarrassment of asking the question.
Well, or just pushing for work, and I think also having an agent means that you don't work that muscle for yourself necessarily. I mean, I know that some people who are absolutely savage, they'll go to the opening of a car door.
Yeah.
They know what's going on, and I need to get better at that. I'm running out of time, James.
Well, they say with business owners, don't be afraid to ask the question, ask for business.
Totally. And there's a friend of mine who's set up a coaching company. It's called Tom Robertson.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And he was talking about, I feel really embarrassed. Like we filmed these little scenes of me like at desks and photo shoot and And I said to him, Matt Lucas once said to me, there's no vanity in comedy. And I'm saying to you, Tom, there's no modesty in business. Right?
Yeah.
Because no one else is going to big you up.
There's a way of doing it, though.
There is, of course, the brash American style leaves us toe-curlingly broken, right?
Yeah.
But there has to be a way of owning your own brand and saying, I'm really good. Even that we think, well, I'm all right. But don't you think?
Yeah, sure.
You have to find a way in your own head to celebrate what you're good at, because only you can do what you do as well as you do it in your style.
Yeah. So there's a very specific set of skills, isn't it? That sounds like Liam Neeson. When you're with what you do.
Yes.
That there are elements in business and private life probably where those skills you can help people with.
Totally. I feel quite passionate about that. Yeah.
Well, have you had any examples?
I do. There was a man who, very wealthy, very successful, very, how would I politely say it? Very dense Irish accent.
Okay.
And he was doing a lot of international trading and conversations, yada, yada, yada. And was aware that could be problematic. So I went into his office and we began working. And he used to cycle to and from work, and I made him have a pencil like that when he was cycling home, just to open his mouth, because he was all very closed and this, and so I was like, we've got to get your mouth open, we've got to get it open, and when you get home, you've got to read the kids a story. Oh, don't make me do it. I was like, no, you've got to learn the power of speech, because it is so powerful. And then I said, you needed to look like James Bond when you walk in the room. How old's that shirt? And he was like, that's just like, get yourself.
Self-conscious.
Sorry, but I said to him, get yourself
Yeah.
In fact, to be fair, I said to him, who's your icon? And he said, James Bond. I said, then get yourself a white, sharp, expensive shirt so that you walk in it. It's what we were just saying about beard trimming. And just like if you walk in and feel good about yourself, everyone else feels good about you.
Cool.
And it's just a seed, but it,
Yeah. It's your brand, isn't it? It's the businesses.
There you go.
So every touch point with people you meet gives an impression of you and your business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then there's another area where we coach people to deal with conflict and confrontation, which is rich because I'm useless at it.
Okay.
But it's all about ego states and about finding a middle ground rather than being up here in a parent state or in a child state. So there are only 3 ego states, they say, and you'll only find resolution if you're in the central one.
Okay.
So that's a really interesting way of coaching people to manage that.
Yeah.
Because it's so again, people
conflict resolution is huge in offices and businesses.
Of course.
Any walk of life, really, isn't it?
And so alien to me because I do a different job every 10 minutes. So someone who is constantly sharing office with someone, my God, that must be so difficult.
Well, if you don't really gel or get on with them, it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people, when they're feeling vulnerable or insecure or, go to a slightly more aggressive, punchy state and maybe they don't know they do it or mean to do it.
Yeah.
Do
you ever find yourself slipping into characters you played? There's a question.
Not with people, maybe just in a sort of wacko way on my own, maybe and I do, again, because I'm so genuinely interested in dialect.
Well,
there's this thing that there was a famous dialect coach who is called Joan Washington.
Well,
she was married to Richard E. Grant, and she used to say that all dialect comes from climate and the land. So that Manchester's a brilliant one. So it's it's damp, and it's quite cold, and so you have a mouth shaped like a pillar box. So if you keep your mouth shaped like a pillar box, you do get that flat, heavy tongue, and you can't help but do it.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
And the other one is Scotland is freezing cold and very, very, very windy.
Right.
So they don't move their top lip much. So, it's just like inevitable. And the other one that I really like is Australia.
Okay.
So that's very, very sandy. And also when the wind blows the sand up. So they keep their teeth tight. So you don't get a gobful of sand at the back of your throat. It's interesting, isn't it? So I had to do a Geordie accent for a play, and that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Really?
Yeah, oh my God. It's so difficult, and these dialect coaches are absolutely fantastic at the way they give you ways in to get to learning it.
I used to try, and when my son was really young, I would teach him things that I thought might potentially annoy his mother a little bit. It was locked down, so one was, there were certain phrases that I'd heard people use for the Geordie accent, Newcastle accent. One was, pupa scoopa. Pupa scoopa. Or roller coaster. and so this 2-year-old boy would be going around the house going, roller coaster. And it was just the most fun I've had.
Has he got quite a good ear? Could he pick up on that? Because people either have or haven't got a good ear, I think.
Yeah, after a little bit of repetition.
Okay.
Yeah, I was quite committed.
How much repetition? Like how determined were you to
Yeah. Well, 4 or 5
cause
times.
a problem?
It's not quite right. That's
Again. One more time.
Roller, watch well. I don't know why I brought that up.
You'll be driving home tonight going, all right, it does work, actually. It works. Works.
Those little things are really interesting, aren't they? How people get into the accents.
Yeah, and again, you know, you talk about the disciplines and the techniques. So when I was at drama school, voice was massive. It was just everything. Everything was about voice, and the articulation and elocution of the words and the precision. And I think sometimes now, God, one doesn't want to sound like an old fart. But I'll often put subtitles on TV because I feel like that it's become fashionable to mumble and
Right.
you know, blah.
Yeah. Right.
And it's blah, blah, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, so, you know, actually all very well on a streaming platform, but, you know, my mum's 85. She watches the BBC and ITV and needs to know what's been said.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was very, very, very important.
I suppose that's down to knowing your audience as well, isn't it? And the age groups and demographics. And...
I think so. But also, the sound guy always gets the worst rap on set. Like, you know, if you carton that, there was a wobble, booming shot, hair in the gate, let's go again. But every time you've got to go for sound, everyone goes, oh, God, sound, got to go again. Why can't you hear it? It's the mic not what? Do you know what I mean? And so I think maybe that has chased the importance of the spoken word away a little bit. I don't know.
So going into...
Maybe it's typing.
Maybe
it's that
yeah.
has taken away the importance of it.
I think there's a separation in communication. Sales trainers will talk about the reluctance to pick up a phone from
to speak,
the younger generation who will send an email or a text or something. And it's just because you're not used to it anymore. And unless I was doing it with the way I do with work, I probably wouldn't either. And I'm thinking that most of us communicate by text, and sometimes they're calling. No.
What?
Who's calling me at this time?
Exactly. It's Peter Kay, isn't it? What? Who's this?
Who's this?
Calling me?
Calling me now. But and then they used to put on a really posh accent when they picked up the phone as well.
Absolutely.
A phone.
Marple 459. It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. We've digressed a little bit.
Sorry. Yes,
I'm interested in this, the idea of like the difference between struggling in the acting world and then having a career and how that grows and all that. Would there be any advice that you would give yourself starting out that you perhaps would have liked at the time?
Enjoy the ride. It's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
You'll be lucky with work, relax into that.
Right.
A lot of actors will never book a holiday because you're so terrified that, you know, and sometimes it can stop you living, I think.
Does it?
I've loved my journey, actually. I mean, I've been all over the world with touring theatre companies, and I think sometimes you have to stop and say, oh, that was great. That was a lot of achievement. Whereas you think, oh, you're only as good as your last job, and what's going to be the next one? And it's very difficult, I think, particularly for women, because there's not a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride. Yeah.
Do you think there's decisions that you have to make in terms of starting families and when to do so? And do you feel that's...
Well, I mean, I directed a play at a university recently, and the girls asked me that. I always say to these students, ask me anything you want, just ask me it. And, you know, and they're like, what? How do you figure out having children? Yeah. And again, you know, just do what you want to do at the time. And, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was filming, got pregnant, and carried on filming with jackets hiding the bump, and then came back to the same show.
Yeah.
I was very lucky, really, that conveyor
that
belt
time.
I stayed on and carried, whereas people will often think, that you are still in the labour ward. It's like, no, that was 9 years ago, actually, So I understand it, but you cannot put it off. You have to just go for everything in life.
Because that time you were in Bill.
I was, yeah.
And I remember watching it, and it was like spot the
bump. Yeah.
At the time, and the way they hid.
Yeah.
There was one where I think there was a fruit store or something like that, and there was like a big melon.
And I was always carrying files and like cheap Zara jackets that just come out like this, But I remember I hadn't really told anybody that I was pregnant, and this has come back to how things have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
And I did some research at the time of how to tell your employer that you're pregnant.
Wow.
I mean, can you believe? And it said, make sure you come with a solution, not just the problem.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I'm pregnant, and this is how I think it could work.
Yes.
I was playing a lesbian character, so they didn't necessarily want to make it part of the storyline. Yeah. Although now probably they would love that because that's interesting, But then it was just all a little bit different. But I remember I was doing this stunt with Scott Maslin, who's in EastEnders.
Wow.
And he didn't know I was pregnant, and I had to climb over this fence and then jump down the other side. And as the stuntman was like, put that one on, I went, I'm pregnant. He went, pardon? I'm pregnant. and into which he said, oh, don't worry, my wife went up the, Machu Picchu or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, But I worked with Pauline Quirk on this particular episode, and I confided in her. And she was absolutely brilliant with me. Right. So whenever it got physical, she'd go, oh, Sally's back, can't take that. Let's just figure, we could do this fight scene standing up, She really had my back. Incredible, really.
Sometimes you have that impression of being cutthroat with cast members and things like that, and if you ever watch any films, they're like killing each other off so that they can get the lead part.
Yeah. I think it suits the outside world maybe to think that we're all.
There's a support. Always, people ask the question, who's impacted you the most in what you do, and do you have someone? Yeah, you have to tell us that's impacted you the most in the acting world.
Yes, certain directors, I think. I think directing is a really fascinating job and quite isolated.
Well.
If they understand you, they can really pull and stretch. And there's a director called Matthew Dunster, and I did a Martin McDonagh play.
Yeah.
You know Martin McDonagh that makes the movies. 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Right.
In Bruges, you might have seen. Yeah. So he wrote those. Yeah. And it was this fantastic play that he wrote called Hangmen. And Matthew Dunster is so tough on me.
Wow.
But I'm so grateful to him. He says every actor has a shtick.
Wow.
Do you know what that is? So a little sort of, a little habit you might do that's your thing that you go to that makes you're safe doing that.
Sure.
But will always be in every character that you do. And he stamps that out. And he said, when you point out to an actor what their shtick is, how they respond tells you quite a lot,
Right.
And so he pointed mine out, and I was like, God damn it, he's right. He's right. And because he's mank like us, he's very like, what are you doing that for? What are you doing? You know what I mean? And I think a few years ago I would have fallen apart. But now I'm like, okay, if you can just step back, take your ego out, you can learn so much about yourself and push through to the next floor of achievement.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I wonder how that's changed over the years in terms of having the character to be able to take and deal with that kind of someone talking to you that way.
Yeah, because it feels like direct criticism.
Because you'd done other jobs as well, hadn't you, around it, in terms of, like everyone probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but like waiting on
Oh
staff
gosh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose in that environment it gives you, especially if you're younger, it gives you that kind of grounding.
Yes,
in character and how to deal with
massively.
people.
Massively. And also, with the windows of unemployment, you've got to be able, it's quite interesting thinking COVID of like, actors were the least bothered by COVID because we were like, well, it's like that for us all the time, really. Like, no money coming in and not really knowing what's going to happen. And is it the end of the world? Like, and I'm isolated and, a lot of actors actually felt very content during all that lockdown stuff because it's like, oh God, everyone else is in our hideous
Well, at least there's a
planet.
reason for it.
You've got legitimate reason, yeah. Yeah, really. I mean, yeah. I think I heard Meryl Streep the other day talking about the anxiety of unemployment. I just thought, God, you forget. You forget it's the currency, really.
Yeah.
For all of us to an extent. It's about coping with the unemployment is more important than coping with the work.
Yeah.
Because I think...
How you approach that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because a lot of people will ask you what you're doing well, they don't really care. There's just a conversation. But an actor thinks, oh, here I am trying to be defined by nothing. Could
be a similar for, this is a tenuous link, I suppose, but business owner, if they lose a big client, how do you deal with that? Can you learn from it?
Yeah.
Move forward? Can you let it go?
Well, I'm an irritating optimist most of the time, and I think if you lose a big client or if something seismic shifts in your business, it can be the absolute making of you.
Right.
Because you've got to reframe, you've got to stand back, you've got to look at the margarine. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes everyone's wardrobe needs a clear out from time to time, and we get comfortable and relaxed into it, and it stops you being hungry.
Sure.
And I think that hunger is fantastic. And keep, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Does that sound like nonsense or?
No, not at all. No.
I mean, it must be terrifying because I totally understand and empathise with the idea of being self-employed. Goodness knows how people cope when they've got people on their books to pay and to, you know.
Yeah, but that's the best thing of being an employee, is having an effect on other people's lives, hopefully in a positive way, and seeing them develop. That's what I mean, most joy more than anything.
Yeah, but to reframe it, to say, right, is this a disaster or is this an opportunity? Like, I'm in your white shirt. Okay, I'm going to need a lot of confidence for this one.
Yeah, the pencil in the mouth.
The pencil in the mouth. Yeah.
I think it's interesting though. So mental approach is, I suppose, perhaps might be the reason why you're still working and others weren't.
Maybe.
Optimism's been a superpower for you.
Yeah, or the timing of coming out of drama school and being from Manchester, and that not being such a terrible thing as it was when I arrived at the school, maybe, or the fashion of the time, and
there's lots of factors.
Yeah, there is. It's very hard to stay. I mean, when you go into audition for a part. It's so hard not to. I mean, I have ADHD. If my son was here now, I'd go, not diagnosed. But I think I have ADHD, so I have a narration going on when I'm in a room. Okay. So the monkey on the shoulder will start going, well, you know, do they really like you? Or, you know, always looked at his phone twice, you know, very hard to stay.
Yeah, talking to each other, what we're talking about.
Yeah, but just, you overthink a lot, I think.
When we spoke about advice to yourself as a young person, would you have any advice to anyone that's looking to get into that industry?
Well, I think there's a sort of culture that's come out of the idea of the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, maybe, that's the way to go. But I think I'm all about training. I think that the discipline of training is really important. There'll always be a local thing that you can get involved in.
Sure.
Read plays, read them. I mean, even today, I don't know, how can one get an agent without having any training? I doubt it. But then the agent world is very many layers.
Yeah.
You know, there's an A-list agent and there's probably a Z-list by now. So,
Tim and I've spoken to as the musician. He talks a lot about trusting promoters and constantly being let down.
Oh, really? See, I don't know about this world. So what does that literally mean? People that offer you things.
Yeah, and you do a lot for it, and then they take a lot and give nothing back.
Right.
Lots of empty promises.
Yeah.
With that, you know, you've not come across that at all?
No, actually, because agents are all the things that we're not, in terms of being aggressive in a positive way, of like fighting for you and not accepting certain things. And interesting, when I went back to the Bill after maternity leave, my agent came in the room with me to talk to the producers about how it would be me coming back, and that was the first time ever I'd got him to see him do his job.
Yeah.
And you know, he shushed me twice because he was making a deal with them.
Yeah.
He was doing his thing of like, no, she needs a car. She's going to be exhausted. You need to give her an episode where she's not got a whole load to learn, because how's she going to do that? Don't make it too physical. She's still got a post-baby body. He was savage. He was really fought for me.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I suppose a bit like having a lawyer with you if you need them.
Exactly. I mean, at one point they questioned him and he went, "We're talking about Judi Dench here." And I laughed and he went, "What are you laughing for?" Like, he was so there was no sort of seriousness in it.
Yeah.
And likewise, I went over to the States a couple of years ago with the Marty McDonough play, went to Broadway, and I found an email chain recently of her negotiating. This is a different agent now, negotiating with the American people about my visa, going, with respect, we're asleep while America's awake. So to tell me that you're going to do it today is no use to me. I was like, I just like, to me that's...
It's nice to have
it's just
someone
not the
like
way
that
I operate.
Behind you and fighting for you.
I mean, this guy that came in the office with me at the Bill, I remember saying to him, "This is another job. Oh, I don't know. They've kept me later than they said." And he went, "Is it time to release the Rottweiler?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness," you know. So it's a necessary thing, an agent.
Find a good one.
Find a good one who cares about the industry, and just write to people. I think bring back the personal touch of writing to directors. Go and see a play. Who's directed it? Write him a letter. I liked your show. I'd love to work with you one day. You know, Don't expect a response. Just do it. And likewise, when you watch TV, I think the credits have become something that people just go, oh, right, see, but watch the credits. Who shot it? Who's the cameraman? Who's the casting director? Who directed it? What else have they been in? And you can, there's something called, is it Spotlight? Anyway, you can find out who an actor's agent is. So if you like an actor and you think that's similar to my style, or I like the choices he makes or the shows he's in, who's his agent? Go onto the agent's list. Who have they got? A short woman with ginger hair? No? Right, here I go. Maybe she could use me because I'm short and ginger.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's And that's the beginning of the brand thing.
Being able to see
yourself.
where you could sell yourself.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Unfortunately, my brand is that I've got 2 different coloured eyes. So, that's a slight mixed blessing. I don't think anyone's ever looking for that.
No. You don't notice it though, really, on screen. That
No,
much,
I suppose I notice it when I have a headshot in black and white, because it's just like, what? Is it that bad?
Crazy. So moving forward, what's going on for you coming up? Is there anything you can tell us about?
Well, I filmed a bit on the Alan Bennett movie that was filmed last year. I got to work with Ray Fiennes. That was interesting.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of Ray Fiennes.
Yeah.
And it's called The Choral, I think. So that will be wonderful when that comes out. I don't know if you know much about Alan Bennett's work, but his observation of northern characters is just phenomenal. I mean, it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
So
very distinctive way of speaking.
Yeah. And sometimes as I get older, so for example, the Bull's Head on Market Street in Marple?
Yeah.
Well, they've done a number on that, haven't they? That's used to be a bit of a scary, rough place, and now it's... So my mum and I went in there yesterday because we went to look at a flat on Hollins Road.
Right.
Lane Road.
Hollins Lane, yeah.
Lane, near the fire station.
Yeah.
So for a debrief, I said, let's go in the Bull's Head and have a gin and tonic. 2 gin and tonics and 2 bags of crisps.
Yeah.
£15.75, James.
I know. Surprised they weren't £15 each.
What happens to the northern round? I've often laughed going, for a round, is that all it is? So I don't know what's going on in there. Can't remember why I'm telling you that. Alan Bennett. So I found myself going. So I've become an Alan Bennett character. So first of all, Mum asked for plain crisps, and I went, plain? When there's salt and vinegar? But that's like asking for vanilla ice cream when there's chocolate. Why would you? So she justified plain crisps. You could see the mom and thinking, kill me now. How long is this going to take? Then we sat down and £15.75 for 2 gin and tonic. So those Alan Bennett observations are so inherently northern and often quite matriarchal. You were raised in a hugely female home. And, I think his observation of women and the way northern women see life are exceptional.
Yeah.
And he's 90. I'm sure he would agree it's his probably last film that he will make.
Right.
Because it's, not for the faint-hearted to create a movie script.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was that.
Yes.
And I am just on my second draft of a play that I'm excited about.
Okay.
So I need to find a producer and maybe use the same venue as my other play, which was the Park Theatre, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's about the muscularity of female friendship.
Okay.
So it's quite dark at times and funny in other.
I was going to ask you about the idea, speaking a lot about mentorship, and finding someone that you can talk with about you and what you do, that they don't get any monetary recompense for it. It's purely out of their you know, that they want you to do well,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
Do you think that's something to that is important in your world? Or?
I do actually, and particularly when I directed at this university recently, there were 3 really talented young black actors, and I managed to find 2 of them a mentor, because I thought it would be useful for them to be guided and helped by somebody who is very, very successful and experienced.
Yeah.
And so that was a direct example of that, I think. I don't know if I've ever mentored anybody. Have I? Actually, I probably have, actually. The young girl that played my daughter when we did the McDonough play in the States.
Yeah.
I would probably say I've mentored her, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just been
mentor
nice
you?
to her. I don't know that it used to have a title, but I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Some of those she might call up if she wanted to. She knew you wouldn't go any further if she wanted to chat about it.
Yeah, and also we I don't know if the phrase self-tape means anything to you, but we came out of COVID and has stayed that we film our own auditions now.
Okay.
And so that can be tough if you're struggling, if your confidence isn't great, and then you filmed it and you're looking, thinking, I know I'm better than that, but I've nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
And so this young girl, I'd filmed her, and this was at my apartment, and she was like, oh, that'll be fine, that'll be fine. And then half an hour later, and this girl's hard as nails, I went into her bedroom, and because she stayed with me a lot, and I said, are you crying? She was crying. And she went, I just can't, that was rubbish, and I can't do it anymore, and you know. And so I was able to just say, that's normal. I just think sometimes you just want to know, is this normal what I'm feeling? Is this usual?
Yeah.
And will it go away and get better?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
She got the job.
Lovely that though, isn't it? It's a lovely, I was thinking whether you've had an impact or not, it feels nice to be able to reassure.
Yeah, exactly. And also because it's quite hard to monitor your own work and your own performance.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of actors will tell you, oh, I thought, well, people will sometimes sabotage a take.
Okay.
Because they don't think, I don't need to use this because it's not, I know I'm not in it or on it.
Yeah.
And then they'll also agree that actually maybe they're not the best judge of what is a good take. And that's why I value directors. I'm such a director's actor. I need a director to say to me, ease off that, push that. You know, that's not so important.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they are quite brilliant. When you find a brilliant one, they're brilliant.
I put out on LinkedIn last night that you were coming on the podcast and asked if anyone had any questions about it.
Oh, brilliant.
I've gone all Richard Herring on this now. So there was a few that came through, which I thought were quite good, actually. And let me get to the first, speed this up or cut it out or something. Here we go. So,
Is it true that one of your legs is wooden?
a friend Paul is inspecting the police force, and he said, "Can she get me a part in the bill?" I was like, "You're a bit late on that one, Paul."
Mate!
So you're in it every day. What are your tips for success? Was the first one.
As an actor?
Yeah.
Actually, to push yourself and don't get lazy, just push yourself. Be better in that play than you were in the other play. Set yourself a task of improving. Try and silence the Greek chorus and the monkey on your shoulder. I mean, and if it gets too loud, find yourself not necessarily a mentor, but someone that knows you and really trusts you, and you can just ring up and say, I'm struggling here.
It's actually from Cheryl McKay, and she says her goddaughter is an actress and looking for her first roles. And it's tough.
Wow.
And
Wow.
She said, and how do you maintain resilience in the industry?
Brilliant friends.
Yeah.
And I find writing really, really, really helps me.
Wow.
Because that's my creativity. And I think what's quite difficult being an actor is somebody else decides when you work and where you work and how you work. So I feel I've reclaimed quite a lot of power by being a writer. It helps me to know that I'm creating something in the silence, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I always found there's lots of people are very easy to criticize or tell you should be doing something different.
Yeah.
And they might be close to you. And it's
yes.
keeping that strength of mind. So actually, I want to do this. I'm going to give it a go.
Yes. And when I was walking around Marple with my mum yesterday, we saw an old friend of hers who used to play badminton.
Yeah.
And an old lady tending her garden, and oh, where are you going? And oh, we're going to look at this flat. Oh, it's terrible there. You have to book a slot for your washing machine. and I just thought, okay, now innocently, she threw a cat amongst the pigeons. Yeah. And I think always in life people will do that. And you have to learn to smile and wave and be nice, not let it, because I was immediately like, well, how do you know that? Whereas my mum was like, oh, she bounced through it.
Yeah.
So I think that resilience is something you constantly need to work at.
Yeah.
Don't sit too deeply in what other people say, because it will meddle with you. It really will meddle with you, I think.
Do you feel your mum is one of the most zen people I've come across? She's so calm and peaceful.
Yes.
Do you feel that being around that growing up was good to see and try and, I don't know.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think because you were the last born, I was the first born in our separate families.
Yes.
And I think I don't know, I'm fascinated by sibling placement because your friend, my brother, is like Mum, isn't he? He is a steady, quiet, calm,
analytic,
unflappable, cerebral human. And because I'm the firstborn, I do think that's why I'm an actor. I think I had a lot of attention on both sides of the grandparents' family, and not sure that's the question you asked me. Where did we start then?
About dealing with
the resilience.
Yeah.
Ooh. And I think that my mom has made me more steady, and my father's personality has made me fight a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be inquisitive.
Be inquisitive, which is another thing about being in the middle bubble.
Right.
And that thing about resolution is to be curious and inquisitive is a very good way to resolve things.
Yeah. Very passionate as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was unique.
Yeah.
And actually now I think, do you know, he clearly had ADHD.
Right.
If you think about that, always interrupting you when you were in the middle of a thought, or he'd ask you a question and then just as you drew back to answer it, incapable of repose.
Yeah.
And so Mum is just this steady, calm person. Yeah.
So this is one from someone that said he wanted to ask something about your family and how they supported you in your career choice. if you
Wow.
received any criticism and how you came over that.
Okay, this is genius question now. I'll try not to cry
Yeah.
because obviously I lost my dad
That's the last
recently.
one, yeah.
So I came home from school and said I wanted to do drama instead of any sciences, and that you could hear the disappointment in the air, but they didn't stop me. And then when I applied to go to drama school, Stockport at that time was a Tory borough and wouldn't provide any funding.
Okay.
So I gave my grandmother's address, which was in Manchester, which was a Labour council, and I got a grant to go to drama school.
Oh, wow.
And I remember it was Richard's Sports Day at the Dale,
yeah.
and my dad was sat on the grass, and I sat down next to him and I said, I've got the money to go. And he lay back on the field.
Yeah.
And he said, oh my God, I thought I was going to have to remortgage the house. Now, it never even occurred to me that those conversations were going on, or that he would back me like that, or go that far. I mean, that's remarkable, right? That's just unbelievable to me. And then they drove me to London, and then they drove me to Bristol for my first job, and they totally supported me. I mean, 1,000%. 1,000% supported me, really.
Yeah.
I think a couple of times I did one play, and in the bar afterwards, my dad went, I think you sold yourself a bit short there, love. This was a National Theatre production, and it was Billy Liar, and I play the outsider who comes in later, and they'd put me at the back as opposed to the front, just because it was supposed to be like this kind of 60s kooky scene.
Yeah.
And I went up to the producer and I said, my dad said, I've sold myself short. And we had a long conversation, and by the time we got to the National, that scene was put at the front of the stage, and
Oh, wow.
I thought, wow, that is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Someone who will fight for his kid,
Yeah.
even
Amazing.
at the age of 23.
Well,
I'm getting the nervous giggles.
It's taken us out the emotional part of the last bit.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for coming on. It seems like a really good place to end.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
And